I came across recently a story about a man who came out of his house on Christmas morning and found a little boy across the street looking with great admiration at the man's beautiful new car. The little boy asked, "Does this car belong to you?" And the man said, "Yes, in fact, my older brother just gave it to me for Christmas." With that, the little boy's eyes opened wide, and he said, "You mean to say that somebody gave it to you, and you didn't have to pay for it yourself?" And the man said, "That's right. My brother gave it to me as a gift." With that, the little boy let out a long sigh and said, "I would really like..." And then the man fully expected this boy to say, "I would really like to have a brother like that who would give me such a great gift for Christmas." But instead, the man was amazed when the little boy said, "Wow, I would really like to be that kind of brother. I wish I could give that kind of gift to my little brother." Somehow this little boy understood the secret of Jesus' new commandment of love. True love consists not in getting something for ourselves. True love doesn't consist in filling something up within us. But the love of Jesus Christ, the true love that we are called to have, is a love that gives to others in service and in generosity. Today's readings are about new things. The new Jerusalem, a new heaven, a new earth, a new commandment, a new way of loving. The first reading from the Acts of the Apostles describes how Christian communities were new in the way that they lived the life of the Christian. And they lived a new way of love. And Paul visited and encouraged these communities. By being Christians, people in those early Christian communities learnt to live and to love in a new and a radical way, a way that was different to the ways of the Romans, a way that was different to the ways of the Greeks, and it was different to the way of the Jewish people. It was a new way of love, and it was the love of Jesus. As a church, as families, as Christians, and even as Australians, we need renewal. The church over the last few years here in Australia has been going through a process of reflection to bring about, hopefully, an opportunity for renewal. And renewal doesn't come in our country through an election, even if that's what the media wishes to tell us. Renewal doesn't come from just doing what the media or from what the next person tells us to do. But true renewal comes through living a radical, different way of life, through living the radical way of Jesus' love. Jesus' love, not just simply where we can get things for ourselves, but the love of Jesus that's lived out through service of others. Authenticity and renewal, these go hand in hand, and true renewal and true love will not happen unless we are authentic to the love of Jesus. People know when someone isn't authentic, when they aren't fair dinkum, in a very Aussie sort of way. A great deal of complaints often can be shared about politicians when they're not authentic. As Christians, we are called to be authentic representatives of Christ in his love. Real renewal is not based upon a change of government, a change of pope, or perhaps even a change of parish priest. Real renewal occurs when every person decides to authentically live a deeper understanding of the love of Jesus and to live that out in service of others. So how do we do that? The first reading talks about Paul going to many different places. And Paul, when he visited different places, he set up micro communities, very small communities of the love of Jesus. And that's the way Jesus starts. He doesn't start with 5,000 people. He doesn't start with 1,000 people or even 200. Jesus starts with a small handful of followers. He picks 12 and he forms them in his love. And I think perhaps that's one of the struggles of us as Christians today. We gather in large numbers, but the challenge of that is that sometimes we can be anonymous. If we were to gather in groups of perhaps 12, how many groups would we have gathering across the parish every week? You'd have 50 or 80 or 100 gathering just across Cronulla if we were little groups of apostles. And that's perhaps what happens in some other Christian communities. You look at some of the fastest growing Christian communities here in Australia, most people would say it's Hillsong, the Pentecostal churches. And what they do is they gather in very large numbers, 5,000 sometimes, on a weekly basis, on Sundays. But then they ask people to be part of cell groups, groups that gather during the week in small numbers of about 12 or up to about 20, where they gather together, they get to know each other. They're known not just within their own family, but they're known within their community. And they pray for the needs of each other, and then they go and do service and live the love of God out in their community. This was the model of the early church. We were told in the first reading that Paul went to Lystra, Iconium, Pisidia, Pamphylia, Perga, Italia, and Antioch. That's just in one reading we hear, just in a handful of verses. And Paul went to all of those places, and he didn't suddenly start with 5,000 people or a big church. He started with small groups. And I think that's really the challenge for us as Christians today. Yes, we're part of a big parish, but our faith needs to be more than just our own individual experience or the experience of a big parish. We need to belong to groups of apostles, groups a little bit like the St. Vincent de Paul Society or the Legion of Mary or many other groups that we have in our parish that gather on a regular basis. They pray together, they encourage each other, they get to know each other, and then they live it out in active service in the church and in the world. A new commandment to love one another is a commitment of service. It's a radical, but it's also an authentic way of living the way of Christ. And we do that not individually, we do that together, and we do that for others. Let us love one another in the way that Jesus asks us. I've given you a new commandment, love one another just as I have loved you.